Yeah, and so I have some questions. My phone's charging. I have some questions from people.
Cool.
Um, hello. How's it going?
I'm gonna be all sniffly because I drank wine last night, and every time I drink, my nose is like.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? Has it always been like that?
No, it was after I started developing allergies. Because my partner used to live somewhere that had like lots of cats and a dog. And then I being over there so much made me develop allergies. And then from that day, when I drink now, I think the things in my nose, my sinuses get inflamed.
Inflamed. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, Mark smoked a cigar and is completely wrecked today. Gotta love watching someone you know, be in their mid-30s. Speaking of being old as fuck. I got to be honest, I still haven't taken, for anyone who is here and didn't watch the energy update, I am with child. It's still very early, so anything could happen. But mostly what's happening now is extreme fatigue and nausea. And I'm really glad that I just did what my body said and stayed in bed all week because I'm having a really good day. I do think that is because I have not taken my vitamins. I meant to bring the pack here. I usually don't take them in the first trimester, but I'm obviously a little more cautious now because of, you know, my geriatricness. But it's fucking like 15 pills I have to take a day, and so back when I had my 27-year-old, it was uphill. We were all extremely vitamin deficient. So, yeah, it's what's been happening. This is the most mild this has ever been for me. But what's been happening is I wake up nauseous. I drink half a cup of coffee. I eat a little bit of food. And then I'm like, well, I feel good. And then I take the vitamins and then I'm fucking wrecked for the rest of the day. So now I know to skip the vitamins and pump content when it's time. So, hi, P. Thanks for being here.
Hey, glad to be here.
I love that you're available to like when you're available, but that you're down for like spur of the moment. I can always count on you to be like record right now, because that's perfect for me.
That's how I work best, honestly.
All right. I'm going to grab my phone because we have some questions there, but get ready to ask some questions. You have two professional timeline jumpers to talk to. I want to talk about this. Speaking of timeline, you don't do the cups, right? You don't do the 2-cup method? No. So the story of me with the 2-cup method is I found out about reality transurfing in January of 2019. A friend just sent me a message and was like, hey, I think maybe you should know about this. And I read the Medium article and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly everything I figured out. I had never I feel like I'd heard the word timeline. And in 2017, I felt a timeline for the first time. I felt that the reality I was in was some sort of like moving sidewalk and that I had shifted to it. But I didn't know how to consciously get on and off of them. So then that same friend in the spring, and this is I'm like in twin flame, like just hell. That person said, have you ever heard of timeline jumping? Which is not what reality transurfing says. And so I went on Reddit, and on Reddit, there were people talking about the 2-cup method. So I did the 2-cup method. My life changed dramatically after that. Anyway, I don't think you need to do something like that, but for big jumps, it's kind of helpful to your to your consciousness and to be very clear with the matrix. Anyway, all that to say, I don't use it very often, but I do. I did it in February of 2021 when I was still really sick, and I did it to jump off the sickness timeline. And, then I put what I would like to be doing on Patreon. I really wanted to change the vibe of my life. My life had been pretty heavy and difficult for a year. So having fun and creatively fulfilled was in there. The only thing that didn't happen was comedy special. Health was the biggest thing, right? I already said that. And that comedy special was because I do this all the time, but I quit comedy. I'm not interested. It feels dystopian and insane to do stand-up right now. Anyway, so all this to say, I did this in February. And then what I always do with the second Post-it note is I tape it under my desk and I don't look at it again. Okay, so I did that in February. The day I found out I was pregnant, I put on overalls that had just been washed. Like I hadn't worn them since they've been washed. And in the washed overalls was the unwashed Post-it note that I had not looked at since February. Maybe I've peeked at it. In my fucking pocket. Like that makes no sense. It makes no sense. And this day was like clearly a huge timeline jump, right? It was like finding this out because initially, I don't know. I didn't think I was going to do it. I was like, oh, well, we can't do this. Anyway, so it felt like a little nudge that it's time to do the cups again. So then I got more tape, like a lot of tape, and I taped it back under the desk and it fell down again and keeps falling down. So I don't think you're supposed to be jumping timelines during an eclipse. That feels like a bad idea. So I haven't done it yet, but it's very interesting that the timeline is like, hey, time to update your order. And I wanted to tell that story, but I started telling it in the last energy update, but without the there's no reason that it was in the pocket of the overalls, like not even actually possible because they had been washed and the thing was not washed. So anyway, I
should probably look at the comments now. Actually, I'm gonna not look at the comments because
it activates my ADHD. I've gotten much better at just not watching them, but
I can't think.
Process. All right. Plus, I can bring them up here when we're ready to look at them. We'll do this. All right. Does that mean you've been trying to move and it's not working? Or yeah, so I want to talk about this a little bit. We might have gotten into this on one of the episodes. Also, P and I recorded twice and had to re-record, so it's hard to know what we said where. But the difference between a soft wall and a brick wall, I just talked about this earlier on the energy update. There is a fucking impediment to getting content out in a timely fashion for me. It's like not just it's sometimes procrastination, but it's not just it's like we recorded that episode in October and then it was some freak thing like your earring hitting the microphone that I couldn't hear when we were recording. And then I recorded another episode and the audio was bad on that one. A lot of times, like I'll be recording early in the month and the person's signal won't work. It's just something. And so every month I go, is this a soft wall, which is a lesson I'm supposed to learn? Like, that I have internalized capitalism and I'm afraid of people thinking I'm flaky or not trying hard enough or whatever? Or is this a brick wall? And for me as a manifesting generator, I can only do things for so long, and I don't want to do them. But sometimes if I'm successful at them, it's difficult to tell that I no longer want to do it. So that's a brick wall. So that's where reality is trying to make me see you don't want to be doing this. That doesn't feel true yet, but I'm starting to open up to the fact that this is probably, I probably won't be doing this time next year. And in this case, a soft wall for you, Della, would be learning about something to do with manifestation or fear. We'll get into what your soft wall would be. A brick wall would be, because it stands out to me that you moved to a remote area. And I think that there's major benefits to living in a remote area for the next couple of years. So a brick wall would be your highest good or whatever, kind of trying to keep you there for a second and making you kind of examine, why are you trying to leave right now? Would you agree with that, P?
Yeah, that's all. When I was reading, I'm like, well, one, do you want to leave? And then also, why do you want to leave? And where do you want to go? That's because I'm not seeing like, where do you want to go in the question. So it's going to be helpful for you to figure out like what you're actually wanting underneath everything. I'm getting really, really clear about that. That's like the only thing I could think of was what's under the struggle to jump.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is, and this is, I feel like a broken record on this, but in the language of manifestation, the sentence would be, I've been struggling to jump to move to where you want to go rather than out of. And when you say, I'm going to jump to, imagine you're on a diving board and you've got all that momentum, right? Because you've set your destination. But when you say out of, that like just desire to escape without that, but that destination, because you're saying out of where you're at, is, it's a loop. Mm-hmm. It's like saying, I want to get out of debt rather than I want to make $200,000,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So where do you want to go? And yeah, where do you want to go? Let's see if you've got that kind of fleshed out a little bit. And we can do this, you guys, if you just want to we'll dig into your personal thing and then kind of jump back and forth. We'll see if my brain will keep it straight. What's your take on this?
Don't resist the fact that you think that you can expect the worst. Like, you're someone who's able to see the worst possible scenario. Like, the fact that you're able to see it, it could be a gift, because your intuition at that point is able to see what not to do, to be able to move away from that thing. And so don't make it your job to not look in that direction. Just trust that your intuition is going to give you answers around that. That's the first thing, is don't try to push against the fact that happens. Because I'm, as if you know me, I have a lot of Scorpio placements. And so we have a tendency to think that everyone's going to die at every possible moment. The worst thing that could possibly happen is just kind of yep, someone's going to walk into this machine next to my house at some point and blood's gonna get everywhere. And that's just a thing that pops up, and it's just okay, you have to allow yourself to experience those scenarios in your mind, neutralize your response to it by not pushing against the fact that you're seeing it or you're wondering if that's gonna happen. And that's gonna be the honest, quickest way to shift into a different vibration, is neutralizing the sensation that comes up once you think the worst thing. To just witness what you're, what's coming through without judgment of yourself.
Yeah, without judgment of self. So I also, the present moment is such a gift for this stuff, but I there's also something where if there's not an issue, we're driven to make an issue. Like there's not a problem, but our minds want to create a problem. I think if your mind is creating like catastrophic scenarios, it's a good sign that things are chill. Because I notice I don't do that when things are fucked up in my reality, but when things are great, I'm like, this particular life experience has been, at any given moment, you can find me doing like miscarriage calculators and shit. I mean, I'm like, I'll be having a beautiful night with Mark and I'm like, oh, he could die tomorrow. Like it's, my brain does a lot of stuff. Also, every decision I make, just the way that my mind works is like every potential timeline. And the first half of them that I can see are all the ways that this could go wrong. And that is really a benefit because then I'm able to get in front of that. And I always I voice my concerns. I acknowledge that. And once they've popped up, I think there's a difference between perceiving a potential worst scenario and expecting it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But if I'm honest, it just kind of depends on where my vibe is. But I agree with P, release judgment of yourself, accept that part of yourself, and you can use that to neutralize those timelines. If you spend a little bit of time, the reality doesn't like to be looked at. It doesn't like it when you guess, what it's going to do. That's why I'm always like, I'm careful to predict future stuff, because if you predict it, then reality goes, well, fuck, it doesn't like to be exposed or whatever. So you can actually, this is like, do you ever notice that the things you really worry about don't happen? So you can actually kind of use that if you're able to stay in kind of a neutral place, because worrying can also, it can really fuck up a good time. But more than anything else, the present moment is such a gift for this, because you just look at your feet and you go, it's not my job to figure out what's coming. So today, is there a problem today? Nope. All right. Well, then keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah. I think trying to overcome the fact that you're witnessing something negative and trying to no, I shouldn't look at that because I should be positive. That's probably doing more damage than you just being like, oh, that would suck a lot.
Yeah.
And my dad's a perfect example of this. He, for as long as I've known my father, he's thought that he's gonna get fired from his job. He's just like, I'm gonna get fired from my job. But he would say it, and even kid me would be like, I know that you think that that's a possibility, but I don't think you actually really truly in your body really feel like that's going to be true. You just keep talking about it. And it never happened. People got fired all around him all the time, constantly. And he'd be like, I don't know why I'm still here. And I'm like, it's because you keep kind of throwing out the fact that you're seeing this as a possibility. And you're kind of like, ugh. And then he moves on with his day. He freaks out for approximately 3 minutes. And then he's like, all right, well, I got to go to work. And then
I got to go to my work. They haven't fired me yet.
Yeah. And it's been 20 something years of this, legitimately 20 something years of this. And it's hilarious.
He's just gonna, to be waiting to get fired after retirement.
Yeah.
Do you have ADHD?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and this is how I feel with the spectrum. It's not really about, and obviously I'm biased. I've had severe ADHD, my whole life, and I got diagnosed when I was a kid, and teenager, and they didn't, back then they didn't even really diagnose girls. And over the years, I figured out hacks but they're not about changing me. They're mostly about changing my environment, and I have learned a lot in the last couple of years, because ADHD has been off the hook, about undercommitting is huge. Setting boundaries, just cultivating your reality to fit ADHD. I believe that these things are not a deficit of ours. It is a deficit of the old reality. So all ADHD does is make it to where you can't participate in the the worker bee hamster wheel. It's this shit that really it's like all these preconceived ideas. And, if we didn't have these dumbass beliefs about productivity and reliability and all these like virtues that are really just meant to benefit your corporate overlords, it'd be fine. If everyone just had the freedom to just like move through life as they see fit. So my advice is change your world, change your life. And I learned to stop. This is for a lot of mental health stuff. Like, I learned to stop committing to things. I learned to start saying like, hey, here's a plan. Yes, I'll make this plan with you, but I can't tell you where I'm going to be or how I'm going to feel. And that can trigger other people. And then, this is kind of the conversation we had last month about, people finding it annoying that I talk over top of people. And I find it annoying, and I am working on it, but I'm trying to work on it from a place of like, I know this is how my brain works. So I'm not really going to descend into shame. I did, but I'm, doing it from a place of like loving myself. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I know that P and I can be broken records on this as well, but from a place of non-judgment. Nothing can be solved or transmuted or released if you're in a shame spiral or a place of judging yourself. You have anything to add to that?
No, just doubling what you say, because I got diagnosed, I think, at 22. And then I got prescribed a ridiculous amount of multiple types of things. And I realized what was happening is that it made me functional at my workplace. And like that's the only reason I knew there was a problem, was because I couldn't function correctly at work. And so it made me function the way that like the people who were productive at my job functioned. And like, which is fine. But then I realized like, well, hold on, because I don't really like what's happening to my body when I take the medicine. So I need to figure out something else. So now I've just kind of bent my reality to suit my energy. And my energy is going to show up when it shows up. I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing if I'm bored and then do something else. And I like multitask. I need to be doing two things like at a time or something like that. That's why I keep moving my chair around, because like I need to like keep energy moving in my body. Yeah. And so just like, and also like knowing my human design was really helpful as well, because like there's things that are mirrored in like ADHD diagnoses that are like in my human design chart. And so just being okay with the fact that my energy just works this way, and that I don't have to like bend my shape to fit into society's puzzle piece. So yeah,
I don't know many people in the awakening. Maybe I do, but I would say the vast majority of people in this, I don't know what the fuck to call it anymore, at this level of consciousness are neurodivergent. They're either, I don't know if they're, how they're defining the spectrum now, if ADHD is on one side of that, but, and that will continue to take place, I think. So if you think of like, when you get to like completely full higher level consciousness, right? There's a lot going on, because it's not a different place. It's more levels of consciousness. So that's not going to be linear. And ADHD is really non-linear. And, you think like when you do like mushrooms or acid, how your consciousness like hyper focuses on one thing and then breaks it apart and then bounces over here and then goes over here and then goes over here. That's the veil is like dissolves and you're having a higher dimensional experience. So it really is, not to be cliche, but it is a gift. It does mean that to some extent your consciousness has been jailbroken from the matrix. And it's less about trying to control that and more about cultivating your reality to your level of consciousness. And you can manifest a job. It doesn't require you to be linear. It doesn't require you to stick to a schedule. They prescribed me meds and then I sold them. And then I got everybody real high on my Ritalin at a sleepover, and people ended up in the hospital and had to drink charcoal. So we I didn't take them because they put me to sleep. So I was sober, but everybody else got fucking wrecked.
Oh
And
my
I got
God.
very grounded. I got extremely grounded for that. And then my parents closed my business down. And then I was like, these kind of bum me out. And now I just feel like I don't really have the temptation to get high, but I just wouldn't add speed to the when I had like full blown Lyme. I actually talked to my doctor about getting put on Adderall because the brain fog made the ADHD so fucking bad that I couldn't get through one of these live streams without just like and she said it's actually not very good for your body when it's trying to recover from Lyme. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good point. Hold on. We have questions on the phone. I want to go grab that. It's charging. I'm getting lots of sweet texts from you guys. Okay. So why don't you go first?
Okay. So for me, for my first timeline jump, I'm feeling real like, because the general feeling that I keep jumping more and more into is like a more and more relaxed version of myself is what it's seeming overall, if I can summarize it. So I tend to feel pretty relaxed after a timeline jump. And then the day after, something really weird will happen. Some sort of strange thing will pop in reality. And I call it like reality pushing up against me to kind of like take, what is it called? Take stock of like where my energetic body is. It's like, well, who is this? What happened here when you did that? Who are you? Here, so reality finds strange ways to push up against me, and it's usually going to result in me being like, and like being like, whoa, why is this happening? And then it's beautiful though, because what that does is it gives me a chance to like ask the witness of myself, which one are you going to choose to like stay in the perception of now? I know you're terrified. The old one really wants to come back because they want to like save you and they feel like they can, and they are terrified. The other one, it's like it can feel the terror, but it's just kind of watching, and it still feels a little bit more relaxed than the previous one. It's like, which one are you going to choose in this moment? That I feel like is the thing that grounds the timeline jump into reality much deeper. So don't expect that you're not going to feel doubt, that you're not going to feel scared, that you're not going to feel stressed. When those things pop up, it's about like, okay, well, now that this thing has popped up, or like now that this feeling is arriving in my body, which angle am I going to look at it? Like, which lens am I going to look at this through? And then I will proceed after I make the choice of like, who am I going to be right now? Yep.
I like that. You know what popped up in my head when you were describing that is when you go to access a file on your phone or your computer and multiple apps could be the one to open it. So it's like, would you like to open this in Video Shop or Photos? And it's like, would you like to open this in your old version of yourself or your new version of yourself? That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I love that visual.
Yeah, so I do think it is, especially when you make, there's a difference between a timeline jump that is voluntary, like intended, and a timeline jump, like you find out you're pregnant at 44. Or it's just kind of like, you have a paradigm shift with the ones that kind of happen to you that you don't really have when you intended it. I also, my timeline shifts are often really gradual, when I set intentions. But the day that I jumped off the timeline, it was intentional. It was like someone called me and was like, your guides are harassing me. Things are about to go really bad for you. Like, you have less than a week to get off this timeline before you end up on like kind of a permanent thing where you're going to lose everything you care about. And we worked through it. Like, we unpacked stuff over the course of a few hours on the phone. And I just, like, the person was like, I'm going to come to where you're at and help you make the jump. And then I was like, I think I already jumped. Like, I think I just needed to know. And I was like getting clues that there was something wrong because reality was starting to look like a movie set and stuff. So like I was getting clues that I was on like a fucked up timeline. But I would say probably so that was February. I would say because I was so deeply entrenched in that Lyme timeline, I started to immediately get better. I've told the story a million times, but my doctor called while I was on that phone call. Her office called and said, I need you to come in. Within a few days, I was in the office and she was like, we're changing your treatment. And I knew these are all confirmations that I've jumped timelines. Like the treatment we were doing before was going to keep me sick for a year. And this treatment is like, some harsh treatment that was working for a lot of people. It worked for me because I jumped that timeline. But echoes of the old timeline would show up. So every time I got a headache in the year before that, if I would get a headache, I would go, oh, that's right, because I have Lyme and my body is falling apart. And I had to train my new avatar to go, it would want to do that. It would want to put on that like weighted blanket of my old burden. And I would have to like consciously. So I really recommend after a timeline jump up to something better that you thought watch. You pay a lot of attention to your thoughts because I very easily, and the person who helped snap me out of it, like warned. And then also another thing I did was I stopped doing live streams. This is when I started doing pre-recorded energy updates. I wouldn't do live streams like I announced on Patreon. I didn't have contact really with the outside world so that nobody would reflect back to me. So don't be afraid to like hide in your chrysalis until your wings are dry, which I don't think is how a chrysalis works, but don't be afraid to like, there's a card in this like sacred Rebels deck that's like guarded vigilantly the new life or something. It's a picture of a butterfly. Don't be afraid to like, depending on how big the timeline jump is and how much of it is a new avatar, to like hide and let that solidify. So I would say it was probably like 60 days where every time I had any type of like ache, I would have to watch my consciousness want to open that app with Lyme Lady and stop it, or open that file with the Lyme Lady app and stop it and open it from, hey, I'm in my 40s. My knees will hurt sometimes, and just like changing the narrative. All right, shut up already. This is big. This is a big thing happening right now. I think there is some split energy afoot. Is this something you deal with?
The closest thing was during the last Lionsgate, something that was happening. The only way that I can make sense of it is I had this feeling that I had this visual that I was a rocket ship and the rocket ship was taking off and the rocket ship was moving. There were people slamming on the windows, like wanting to get into the rocket ship. And I'm like, I literally can't open the doors or I won't take off. It was an overwhelming feeling of like, I have to go. And I know you guys are smacking these windows, but I need to go. I have to go. And the only thing that kind of really helped me was knowing that like there's another rocket ship pulling up right behind me, but I have to go. Like there's like this one is gone. I have somewhere to go, and there's people who are on the rocket ship and they need to go somewhere too. And so knowing that like even if I left, something else is going to scoop everybody else up. Whoever is ready to get scooped up, they'll get scooped up by whoever pops up, and they will move. So that's how I moved through that.
Two things. One, when I first met Mark, he talked about, I can't remember if he read this somewhere or he had a dream about it, but that we're all just climbing ladders next to each other. And sometimes you're climbing with someone for a really long time to where you think you guys are going to be together forever on this journey. And then they fall down their ladder or they start going faster than you, And in those moments, it's really hard to remember that none of it matters in reality. Like the speed at which you go. I mean, this is really It's Grand Theft Auto. It's free play. It doesn't matter. It's a video game, and different souls want to experience it differently, but it's easy in this stuff. And I'm guilty of it, to feel like waking up, ascending, is the good thing. And the other thing is the bad thing, and we all also are coming out of being like guilt and shame and codependency being our primary motivators in reality. And so a lot of us are really having to face this codependent belief that, you're responsible for other people. So the thing that's interesting about the Atlantean wounds is that so in Atlantis, everybody's awake. Everybody's balls out awake during that civilization, right? Been awake for a long time. I miss this up sometimes, but it's like, I think in Mu and Lemuria, everyone's like super awake. Atlantis was like during the beginning of the descent. But at one point, everyone knew we're about to go back to sleep, But then as you start to fall asleep, you start to forget that stuff. You start to believe in duality rather than polarity. You start to believe that things are separate rather than one. You start to desire to proselytize your version of reality because we're going back into separation consciousness. So when we're in unity consciousness, you still have your own perspective, your own square on the mirror ball, but you also have access to everybody else's. And so you're able to go, hey, that square on the other side of the mirror ball is seeing a completely different version of reality than me. And it's not my preferred version, but like they have the right to that version. And I get that they're me. And so, but as we start to go back to sleep, separation consciousness, we're going from the 9th dimension where we're kind of one thing down to the 3rd dimension where it's just ego and instinct and consciousness and so we're going to a more limited version. So in reality, before we started to fall asleep, I believe we made those decisions like, well, I'm going to play through the karmic reality. Someone else is like, I'm jumping straight to the present moment. This is my question is, are the babies coming to the planet now higher dimensional beings? Are they the assholes that are jumping straight from Atlantis? That's what I would like to know. Because if I get one of these assholes who jump straight from Atlantis, we have some words as soon as you're able to speak. So the transmutation of that guilt and that fear is kind of releasing the illusion. It was trauma for us because we thought we were separate, which is what this game is. It's trauma and pain when we believe that we're separate. The more we wake up and remember that we're one, the less trauma and pain it is, but we have to process it first. So yeah, this is one of those, the only way out is through, you have to, face it. Okay. So Della, I think we left that at pick your destination and it should be good. Yeah, I'm in a near constant state of that. I know I have something in Scorpio. I didn't realize that was a Scorpio thing. Hey, and to reiterate, we're going into the Scorpio nodes. And I think it's interesting that what I'm getting is that people who haven't reconciled their fear of death are going to be forced to reconcile their fear of death. Does that resonate with you?
I'm like, that one's interesting. Yeah. I wished one wish, like if I could have a regret, it would be that I wasn't born into a society that had that doesn't feel weird about death. Like I feel like that would be really cool because like when like kids talk about death, so like they're just like, yeah, that guy died, and and I feel like it'd be really cool to be like in a world where we didn't have this like death is the worst thing, because my mom is very weird about death and like funerals. She like wouldn't wear purple because it reminded her of funerals, and like if there was a cemetery within a mile of where we might like rent a place, she would not live there. So like she's just really, really weird about that type of stuff. So I was born into a place where people were just like, death is the worst thing that could happen. And so I wish I wasn't born into that, but it's cool because I'm worked through it. There are days where I'm like, whatever. And then there's days where I'm like, this is so weird. The whole death thing.
Yeah, this whole property is a memorial garden on the other side. So at any given time, there's a fucking funeral happening next to our house. Yeah, I think that death means physical death. Mm-hmm. One thing that I would say about like, the pandemic and stuff is just like, imagine if we had reconciled our fear of death before this thing happened. Like, can you imagine how different this all would have played out? But not just physical death, but also like death of old versions of yourself. So it's something we talk about here constantly, that you can kind of forget that this was once something very challenging. It's also very funny that my nose has been plugged up since we started this. And
I'm like, I can breathe just fine. Everything's good.
Yeah. I also think Mark took my morning sickness so I could get some work done. Cause this is like, I feel amazing today compared to how I felt. And he is on his deathbed. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And this is something that's happening a lot, is a lot of people picking up other people's physical stuff. I was having like heart attacks that weren't mine. But yeah, my nose is, I'm like, what is happening? Am I getting sick right now? It's like, oh, I got peas wine nose.
I needed to breathe.
I think that the death of old versions of yourself, which, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who are like trying to go back and be the 2019 version of themselves. Like they're waiting for the world to go back. And that's an odd thing. And so yeah, that's what the next like year and a half really feels like it's about to me. And it's for those who have mastered that. Broken record stuff here too, but it's about life. It's about learning how to live. Because I think a lot of us who are awake or have been transmuting and transforming, it's like, all right, already. Now learn how to live, learn how to smell the roses, learn how to enjoy your moments. Enough with the healing, enough with the whatever,
Yeah. I tweeted about that the other day. I'm like, every time I get like hyper fixated on death and I go through my like existential self, I'm like, oh, I'm not being alive. I'm being a bot, and I'm not like actually existing in my life. And I need to like literally feel every sensation like with all of my presence, and then that usually goes away, the death fixation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let me see if I can keep track of all this without fucking up. So Alyssa is who we were talking to about this, about jumping to a new timeline, and it doesn't feel easy. Yeah, judgment, self-judgment. Mm-hmm. It's a big part of the dualistic reality, and it turns things into hamster wheels. So like, I think it's perfectly normal to, when you jump onto a new timeline, for your old timeline to echo, which is what I was just talking about, right? Another example of this is if you got really fucked up in a narcissistic relationship, I tell people to expect the next 5 partners to be narcissists. Like they're not, and whatever. I hate that language, but like people who reflect back your narcissistic parental experiences, however you want to put it, like people who are not healed enough to be in a relationship and who do this kind of like build you up, tear you down, shit. Any type of dysfunctional relationship, avoidant, attachment shit, people who get clingy, people, whatever the thing is, if you had a big toxic relationship, expect that energy to come back through the next 5 people. Now, don't project that onto them, but don't pedestalize and come up with a fantasy version of them, because anytime you've engaged with something in reality, reality is going to bring it to you. Sorry, we're doing this a lot. Reality is going to bring it to you for a bit in echoes because it thinks that you like this. And so if when it does that, you go, okay, no, thank you, and you ignore it, then reality after a while goes, oh, when I present them with this thing, the algorithm, when I present them with this thing, they don't interact with it. Right. So like, or you change the narrative on it. So when I got the headache, rather than going, this is a disease that's eating my brain, I go, people get headaches. Right. So I'm taking the weight off the thing. Now, if when reality brings you this thing, you take it as a personal failing, that's your narrative, that's your story, and that's why you get stuck. So this is why we have to come to a place where we accept all of your experiences, accept the pace at which you're healing, the pace at which you're moving, the pace at which you're doing things, because it keeps you free and loose to be able to write narratives that benefit you. And I just like, I don't believe in going backwards. I do believe that things are a spiral. And so you might revisit things. And this came up in the energy update if you haven't already heard it. But that early timeline, those characters are just being written. Those parameters are just being written. So if you indulge in self-judgment, you're programming your new timeline with the same trash that you're trying to escape from the old timeline. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just two things. One, stuck is a feeling, and the second thing is momentum is a feeling. And so, like, when you're stuck, question why, and don't question it for too long, but like, why do I feel stuck? And you're not questioning it so that you get to an answer. It's more like just keep questioning like why you feel stuck until you don't know why you feel stuck anymore, and then just hang out in that weird place where you're kind of confused about whether or not you're stuck. That's really powerful, because you're not feeling stuck anymore. You're like, well, I don't actually really know where I am. Actually, I thought I was stuck, but now I don't know. And that is where momentum can come from, is when you start to like loosen up the sensation of being stuck, because it's literally just a feeling. Nothing else can determine whether or not you are stuck other than you feeling stuck. So that's a big thing, is you're just feeling stuck. Stuck's not a real thing because time is always moving. So yeah.
I love that, stuck is a feeling, because it feels like it's a solid fact. So this is another, right now at least, this is another hard wall, soft wall thing. And I always have a hard time talking about things that I haven't experienced, because it makes me feel like a hypocrite, but also, I haven't been partnerless a ton in my life. I'm, I'll do like a year here and there, but I've spent most of my life in long relationships. But this is an interesting window of time where everyone is moving very fast in the raising of their consciousness. And so if you just imagine like everybody's like going up this spiral like this, and that I believe that relationships are not necessarily lifelong, and that it's more about you just happen to be on the same like vibrational, ideally, if you're not staying in relationships because of guilt and shame and societal expectation, ideally you're catching people that you're on the same frequency and moving in the same frequency for whatever period of time. And it's like usually pretty obvious, like, oh, this is someone I'll probably evolve with for a very long time. But I think it's a difficult time to catch that, because people are growing so fast right now. And I think it's also, there's not a shit ton of us yet. I mean, that it's growing every day. I mean, people are waking up every day, but when you're looking for someone, it's like, does your crown chakra just fucking crush your head if you have something on top of your head?
Yeah, I can't. I can't do headbands, or like I can do a soft hat, but like
Yeah, I don't know how Mark does it. Mark has a beanie on all the time, and I'm always, it's like stressed. I'm like, take that thing off and let the energy out of the top of your head. I don't know how you do it. Heavy is maybe it's the tiara. Yeah, so hard wall, soft wall. Here's my tips for manifesting a partner. I do the 2-cup method. First cup, I put happily single to make sure you're that, because there is like a desire to escape loneliness right now, which is something you want to go through rather around. And then on the second cup, I put in a happy, loving relationship, in a happy, loving relationship that's reciprocal, in a happy, loving, reciprocal relationship with someone who is wide awake and self-aware and wants the same things in life as I do. You put resonant in there. You could put other things that you're, interested in, knows how to build a treehouse, whatever the thing is. And then this is the only type of manifestation that I recommend doing zero actionable. Because what you want is to vibrationally align. The days of just like being in a relationship with who the fuck ever, just they're over. There's such amazing things to be done in relationships with resonant people, because you can create worlds together. But it's very difficult to align with that if you're coming from a place of like needing a relationship. So if I was telling you how to manifest a new job or house or career, whatever, I would tell you to then afterwards do actionable things. But with this, I say set it and forget it, and accept that if it doesn't come in, it's a wall, and use that mirror of that experience to like work through any like codependency or loneliness stuff. And I understand that the thing that I get is that I get a lot of people right now are feeling like, I've already done the being alone thing. I've already done it. I've been doing it for a long time. And that is not something I can relate to. And I won't pretend to be able to relate to it, because it's not my personal life experience. Really, I've never like been alone and then been like, I want a relationship. I don't think I've ever stayed alone long enough. But I'm never really trying. I feel like I just was walking down the street and then it's like, oh, hey, we're going to spend 5 years together. What would you say to that?
I would say make having a partner not a big deal. That's the biggest thing is for me, is like, don't make it a big deal, because whenever I think it's a big deal, then I do weird things to try to keep the person, and then that makes the person want to go away, because I'm like, I got to keep it because you're a big deal. And so get to a place where it's not a big deal whether or not you are with someone. For me, I did that through like, so when I met my partner, I met him at the end of 2019. In the beginning of 2019, I was just like, I'm gonna have fun. I'm just gonna date people. I'm gonna have fun and just have a great time, because I like had a weird thing for like years, and for a few years. And then I was just like, I'm just having fun. Had a lot of fun. Then I realized that it stopped being fun, and I was like, oh, I think I'm okay just being like alone again. That's like, it's not really fun for me to be with somebody anymore. I'm gonna like be by myself. Got super sick, thought I was gonna die. And then I was like, well, if I'm gonna leave the planet, I'm gonna have fun a couple more times. And then I went on a couple more. No, I went on one date, and it was Elias after that. And I was like, oh, I think I'm done. Like that, this is nice. And it didn't feel like this big deal. I was like, oh, like it's like I stumbled upon like my soulmate on accident. Like, I don't know. It was kind of like, oh, hey, cool. And like, it just felt very casual. And I was like, yeah. And I also, I think because of the whole health thing, I was in a space in my life where I was just like, kind of like, just free falling, And so getting to a place where it doesn't feel like a big deal. I would do that through having fun on dates. I would do that through not thinking that like the person that you're going to be with has to be this perfect, exact soulmate being. That puts a lot of weight on the manifestation. But yeah, just make it not a big deal to be in partnership. Finding examples of people in relationships that it's just kind of like, oh yeah, having a happy relationship, that's normal. Just normalize it. Again, like make it mundane. That's what I talk about.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. And I don't think you have to seek out. I mean, I've had 5 long-term big love soulmate relationships, and I met the first one at church, the second one at a drug deal, the third one at a drug deal. I guess that's my advice. Do drugs. The fourth one at a comedy festival, and the 5th one sent me an email. So I dated and all of that, and that nothing ever came of that because there's almost like too much expectation. But longing and pining, although it is very difficult not to do that, and I'm not saying that's your experience, Leslie, but I'm not minimizing. But longing and pining are pushing energies. And so it actually defeats the purpose. So trying to stay as fully accepting of being alone forever, like that's the best energy of like Mark popped in right when I think probably the first time in my life, I was like, I was dealing with a lot of longing and pining because I couldn't have that twin flame relationship. And so it was making me want to grab, where historically I'm always in a place of, I don't know. I'm just never really out of relationships long enough to fucking get to the longing and pining. You know, it's like a year in between, and then they're very long relationships. But I was struggling with that longing and pining because I was having a hard time accepting that person didn't love me. And so that was making me long or pine for anyone to get me out of that, which I'm not saying that's your situation, but that can happen when you've already been alone for a long time. I struggle even knowing how a relationship would look like is, yeah, they're really cool and they're really different in the age of being self-aware. It's a really completely different thing. And it's almost better that you've had a long time without it. I do feel like now I've maybe answered questions that you weren't asking, but because you're not bringing your last relationship shit, like chances are you've healed and transmuted all of that, and you really get to like create it from scratch. So I strongly recommend putting the things that you want on the cups, and then just that's it. And I'm surprised sometimes when you hear people's list of the things that they're looking for in a partner, how silly they are sometimes. You know, it's like, I want to have a good job, and it's like, no, how about like resonance? Wanting the same things, reciprocalness, so on and so forth. Okay, we're gonna do some ones from the there's so many questions. I love it. Sometimes we do these live streams and nobody has any questions, and I don't know what to talk about because I do talk a lot and run out of things to talk about. So I really appreciate you guys having lots of questions. Heather says, I'm in the middle of timelines and feel myself getting stuck in old trauma stories. I've been renovating a parent. The dog is dead asleep and his tail is just tapping the floor. Renovating a parent's home and moved in several weeks ago. Childhood was basically 24/7 trauma here. I intend to make it a rental because despite high hopes, this place is toxic to me. No matter what I do, I catch myself ruminating pretty often. What are some tips for keeping myself in the new reality that I'm creating and not getting pulled back into old trauma, lack, and fear? The energy on this to me doesn't feel, this feels like you're going through and processing stuff that was like left in the attic of your consciousness. To me, this doesn't feel like a loop. It feels, because you can always kind of look at your physical reality and get allegory of what your inner journey is doing. I mean, you're literally in this home and you're rewriting.
Renovating it.
Huh?
Like you're renovating a physical place. Like you're literally renovating. That like, yeah, great job.
Yeah. You're moving things around, you're painting the walls. So that's what I would say to do. This give me goosebumps. That you're in kind of a contracted state right now because it's very raw, it's painful, and you're like almost wanting to escape. I would say go into this and be like, hey, trauma, hello, old friend. This house represents that childhood and what it did to me and everything else. And I am taking agency over my experience and I'm rewriting this story by painting these walls, moving this furniture, doing all this stuff. And, know that it's going to be painful and, like sit in it. Know that it's going to be painful and transformative and don't try to avoid that, and deal with if there's things to address about your stories and your timelines afterwards, then deal with it afterwards. But this to me just feels like a transformation process. That's what your energy feels like in your words. So I don't think you're stuck or looping. I think you're transmuting. Rudy said, what are the best manifestation practices for reflectors?
Okay, pay a lot of attention to how where you are and who you're around affect your energy. And constantly be willing to change things around when your environment or the people around you are not moving you in the direction of the thing that you are wanting. I'd say the biggest thing is being a little bit relentless about what you allow into your experience, like to the point where you only watch certain shows on TV. Be very strict about like who you follow on social media. Like, just be really particular about the energies around you. And the more that you're noticing, like, okay, well, when I spend a lot of time in this space, my reality tends to reflect this type of energy. All right, so let me adjust, let me move. So notice the things in your reality that you're doing well, like the things that you enjoy. Who are you around when you're doing those things? What are you listening to when those things are happening? What's coming in and like moving through your body? What are you thinking about, feeling during those times? And move more and more towards those types of energies. And so like just don't hold on to anything as a reflector. Keep moving around. Like I feel like I see reflectors as like these kind of like bubble beings, and like life kind of passes through you and moves through you, and you have to kind of dance with that and like just keep adjusting as much as possible.
I like it. I think I only know one reflector. Justine says, besides watching and observation, what other tricks are there to get lack mentality under control and put a stop to it? Love you too. Thanks for any input.
I'm gonna use the bathroom really quick.
Okay. Yeah. I think that something about lack mentality and manifestation and my frustration with things like The Secret or whatever is that it however old you are, however long you've been an adult, plan on not being fully out of lack mentality so if you've been an adult for 20 years, and which means that you're 20 years entrenched into these beliefs, if you're 40 years old, you've been doing this for 20 years, say it's going to take me 10 years to completely remove my lack programming. I can like feel the disappointment when I say that. Now, it's probably not going to take you 20 years because there are a lot of people like myself, Noah, like giving information. And so like, but for me, I started actively, like a full-time job working on my lack programming when I was 30 years old, 31 years old in 2008. I didn't finally crack it until 2013. and I'm really good at hacking reality. And I wouldn't say I didn't get to the point where I could reach out my hand and have whatever I want until 2019. So you got like 11 years I spent chipping away at this. So the reason I say that now, it's going to continuously get better, but once again, there is a when there is a judgment of self for having lack mentality, or an impatience with needing to get rid of the lack mentality, rather than a willingness and a patience to accept this part of yourself and like slowly release it, slowly replace it with different ways of being in the world, you set yourself back, because it takes energy. All these things take energy. Judgment takes a bunch of your energy. Manifestation requires energies. Intentionally creating your reality requires energy. If you're wasting time judging yourself, then you're taking up energy. And the idea of like permanently getting rid of it or whatever, rather than just seeing it as a gradual, hey, I started here and I've made it this far. It's disempowering, and it keeps you in this kind of like, is it good? Is it bad thing? So I would say, watching and observation are the most effective things. I would say trigger your lack. So things like go to the grocery store and buy foods that you want rather than foods you can afford. Take risks, don't spend your rent and then get mad at me. But like start, I talked about going and eating at a fine dining restaurant, and then because you triggered that lack. Dude, even mentioning food, instantly my mouth starts watering. Triggering your programs. My mother, who's the fucking epitome of lack consciousness and put so much of that in me, is a 24/7 like how much gas prices are. She's not now because she doesn't leave the house, but like this woman would tell me what the gas prices were for, like, the gas is up to $2.25 and over cents. This woman bought chips she didn't like. She preferred this one kind of chips. If she buy chips she didn't like, I can't remember what it was, because they were 40 cents for a whole ass bag. And she was like, yeah, but if you add that together, I buy 4 of those a month. That's like $2.50. And I'm like, oh, this is poor people math is what I call it. It's keeping you in it. It's keeping you small. So stretch, trigger your lack so that you can observe it, but observation, and forgive yourself for having lack programming. Think about all the ways that, it has served you in life. And get rid of the self-judgment. You have anything to add to that?
Nope. Just I'd say I understand like why it could be such a big deal that like lack programming exists, because you can't really look at lack while like in a certain category. So let's say lack is the category, you're viewing lack in the category of partnership. Say that. You can't manifest a partner while you're viewing the lack of a partner, because it's all about perception. If you're perceiving the lack of a partner, you can't perceive the existence of a partner at the same time. It's not. So I know why it's a big deal, like why it feels like it's a big deal to be experiencing the feeling of lack. But at the same time, when you make having the like experience of perceiving lack a problem that's bigger than you, the problem that's bigger than you can deal with, then it's a problem that's bigger than you can deal with. And so it makes it this big, scary monster. And so make it so that like, okay, sometimes I'll perceive lack, and it's not going to be the end of the world. I live with a bunch of humans on this planet, and a lot of them live in lack. And so obviously from time to time, I'm going to come across that sensation of having lack. Like we're all here, we're all connected. So I'm going to feel that sometimes. And so just don't make it a big monster that has to be defeated.
My body's doing a lot of things right now. I don't know how much longer I can stay on here. I ate right before I got on here, so I was feeling great, but that's obviously fading. Joshua asked, $20 tier, could you put together a master list of anyone and everyone worth following, considering, enjoying during my self-care break? I really hang on to these as a lifeline, a breath of fresh air in a sea of crazy. You guys can go comment and contribute to that. I think he's asking the people on the tier, but anyone I have on is who I think. So All right, this one's long, and we all know I'm half illiterate. So I want to have a child with my partner of 7 years. I'm 35 years old, very overweight, and I'm having fertility issues, cysts, cycle irregularities, uterine fibroids. Losing weight is important to me as I have as little complications as possible, but manifesting only weight loss isn't my real issue or goal. I have a lot of hangups with my first null pregnancy 14 years ago. Like I had my chance, but now I'll have this. I can't have this with my husband because I have hard lessons to learn about that experience with an ex. I also have hangups about being thinner. I associate weight loss with mania and being bipolar. I also associate being thin and attracting attention with being taken advantage of, not taken seriously by others, especially men who are strangers and men and women in my workplace. Having experienced extreme weight gain has taught me how differently strangers and loved ones treat heavy me versus fit me, sadly. I want to tap into a timeline frequency where I respect my body and set tangible goals to better myself physically. I want to be a mother and give zero fucks about what could go wrong with my plans. Is there a way I can consolidate these seemingly disconnected things into new, powerful, and simple manifestation techniques?
Okay. Don't stop playing Search and Destroy because it feels like you know a lot of things that are going wrong. Like you're like, I know that this is happening. I know that this is happening. I know that this is happening. That usually is the result of doing a lot of like Instagram spirituality when people are like, bring up these shadows all the time. Bring up the shadow. You have a shadow. It needs to be fixed. And an obsession with like fixing the shadow, it causes a lot of confusion because we always have problems with us. Like there's always something weird living underneath the surface that could pop up at any moment and destroy us. There's something that's happening underneath always. And so it, again, I guess to read it, my last answer to the last question is all the shadows that are popping up as problems that need to be fixed. What if they don't need to be fixed right away? Like, and I know that like that sounds like, oh no, like we need to fix everything, but it's like, hold on, what if we don't need to focus on fixing everything that's wrong before getting the thing? Let's simplify what it is that you want. Like get really, really clear on what you want. And so for me, when I start doing the whole like, I have this problem with myself, I have this subconscious belief, I have this thing. When I start doing that, I have to be like, what do I want? What do I want? And I'm like, I want to relax. And I'm like, okay, cool. So how can I relax today? What will actually make me feel relaxed, not what will like make me pretend that I'm relaxing and then like I'm laying there and I'm like, I'm panicking. Like what step can I take to actually move towards feeling relaxed? Getting really simple on the like, what do you want right now? How do you want to feel? That's going to be probably the simplest thing that you can answer. But stop trying to solve everything that's wrong with you all at one time. Like it's too much. And it can get really overwhelming and confusing and complicated. And if we are looking for problems to solve, we'll find more of them. And so instead of looking at solving issues, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Keep it really simple. Like one word, if you can, to get out of all the gobbledygook on top of everything.
I love that. That's my issue with the shadow work. I'm like, listen, your shadow will show up and take a shit at the dinner table and then you can address it. But sometimes there's too much. It's too much. So I'm assuming though that the reason that Sylvia, I think I'm reading that right, is has this compiled file of things that are possible issues is because you're having a hard time moving forward on a goal. And so you've got like all the list of things that could potentially be an issue. So I would, broken record, do the 2-cup method. First cup, trouble getting pregnant. Second cup, giving birth to a healthy baby. I would, probably put something in there about my own health and vitality. And then focus on the positive things about it. I can relate, like I've been very, very, very overweight and then not. And people do treat you different, but I can never tell if it's they treat you different because you carry yourself different. Like now I just kind of carry myself whatever, it's the same difference. But when I was younger, I put so much weight on weight that like I would walk into a room very differently. Not to say that there's not pretty privilege or whatever, not to take away from that. But that was something that often got reflected back to me from in me. And that was something I would observe when I was overweight. I thought about it so much. Like I don't think I've ever had anything take up more space in my mind, that I had this kind of self-obsessed belief that other people were thinking about my weight at all times. I mean, I did get that impression because I was like married into a family that had like genuine hatred for fat people, and they projected that onto me a lot. So I was maybe right. But anyway, all that to say, yeah, some of this is just getting stuck in the weeds, I guess. I mean, if you're saying like, you would like to be at a healthy weight for carrying a pregnancy that already the odds are stacked against you. Do you know what I mean? Where it's already like, oh, I already have these issues that are going to make it difficult. I want to put my body into the best position possible. The frustrating thing with weight, and this is really frustrating for parenting as well, is that there's a lot. We've had so much focus about appearance for so long that the truth about weight in regards to like your health is all tied up in this shit. So it's like, oh, how do I teach my kids about having a healthy relationship with food and portions and everything else to like help them be healthy and keep their immune system robust and stuff for things like what's going on, without projecting, when I was a kid, my mom's like, you're going to be fat because everyone in your family, it's like projecting with the looks stuff. So that's a lot of what this is. It's like you want or need so you have as little complications as possible. All this stuff isn't about health. It's about appearance. And those are kind of living in two different worlds. So I would say ignore this and just focus on having a healthy baby, having a healthy pregnancy, having a healthy body. And then if this gets triggered when it happens, then cross those bridges when you come to it. Be in that state of like observation, like, oh, people treat me different, whatever. But I think you might be saying that you're sabotaging. I forgot which hand was saying. You're sabotaging the health, and you think you're sabotaging it because of these other things.
I have one thing to say also. This is for like anyone who is like not liking where they are and wanting to go somewhere else, is like understanding how much everything really is energy, and know that like you're pouring energy into certain things, you're investing energy into certain things. And so find ways to divest your energy from the problem and invest it somewhere else. Because sometimes like neutralizing things is amazing, and getting to, because from neutral you can move anywhere. But then once you divest your energy from the problems, your energy is not just going to sit there. It's not just going to like exist around you and like not move. It's like, you got to do something with it. We got to do something. And so find ways to invest your energy. So like for me, when it came to just changing the experience I was having, I divested my energy from worrying a bit. I spent less time worrying and started listening to podcasts. Like I was just like, okay, if I'm listening to a podcast, I'm not worrying at the same time. So my time and my like energy is not being invested into worrying. I'm putting it somewhere else. And so like with my business, I literally hired a business coach, because like she's called a business coach and my body likes her. But I'm like, I'm literally pouring my money and my energy and my time into my business, because I'm paying this person who's labeled business coach in the video game. And I'm like, I'm putting all that energy into business stuff rather than putting that energy into worrying about business and worrying about whether or not I'm going to be okay. So invest divest your energy, go to neutral, invest it somewhere else. And it doesn't have to be money. It could be time. It could be emotional states. But yeah, like go like that.
If you want to get more woo with it, you know, try reaching out to like the soul that, you know, it's really easy to get sucked into the you know, the weeds of fertility and pregnancy and, you know, this kind of stuff. But at the, you know, it's a portal for a higher dimensional being. So focusing on things that like feel good and are positive, like see if you can reach out and communicate with the soul that would like to use you as a portal, you know, get out of the negative stuff, you know. I mean, yeah, I mean, if I was going by the mainstream narrative, you know, it's not great to have a kid when you're 45. I mean, they don't say good things. And, you know, but from like a galactic, and, you know, could change, portal could close, but like from a galactic standpoint, it's like, you know, this whole like creating life and stuff, like we want to take a lot of credit for it, but it really is ultimately about, this is how souls get into the game. So that can be a like thing to pull you out, like big picture. But yeah, I agree, divesting your energy and putting it into, so like instead of all that deficit, you know, putting all your energy into positive things. So you know, I need to get out of debt, I need to lose weight. Those are both like heavy things, but rather it's like get excited about a new way of eating, get excited about a new exercise regimen. Like you can also just like release a lot of weight by, you know, releasing it. And it sounds like, you know, it, a lot of the lessons that it came to teach you. So by like releasing those and thanking them for, you know, you can let go of a lot of that. All right. Sydney said, how does one do anything as a projector? I still have no idea.
Okay. So first of all, I feel like I mention this all the time, but I'm gonna say it here today. Projectors only have to wait for the invitation when it comes to interacting with other people's aura fields. And like, if you think about the reason why you have to wait for the invitation, the reason you have to wait for the invitation is because your aura is a laser beam. Like the projector aura goes and like shines into people, and people feel real naked. They feel penetrated when projectors are looking at them and talking to them about themselves. It feels like suddenly my clothes are off and my body's open. Like, what's going, like, excuse me? And so that's literally the only reason why you have to wait for the invitation, is it's consent, essentially, to penetrate someone else's aura. And so everything else is whatever your like authority is. Like, let's say you are a self-projected projector. It's like you're talking to yourself and then listen back to yourself, and that'll tell you like what you need to do because you'll hear yourself. But like, you're able to do whatever based off of your authority. It's just literally when you are reading things about people, wait till they ask you, or wait till they give you an energetic openness. Like, it feels really easy for you to say what you need to say. It doesn't feel like you're saving them or something like that. But yeah, that's it. That's the only invitation thing is.
Dude, projectors trying to give people advice is, Mark's a projector, and it's so funny how disastrously it turns out every time he tries. Like, I can just peruse into people's auras and be like, here's everything that I would change. My 2 cents is I would change all of this. And if Mark even the slightest bit tries to advise somebody, dude, they freak the fuck out. It goes horribly wrong. The amount of people that think that Mark's out of his mind just because he's tried to like share wisdom with them is so funny. And I have to remember sometimes to be like, oh, what do you think I should do?
Yeah, no, like asking your projector, because the thing is, when projectors, like when Lacey talks to me, I'm like, I wish I could drink you like a cup of something. I don't like, it's so delicious. It's so delicious when projectors are when you ask and they're looking at you and they're telling you what they see. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. It's so beautiful. And like understanding how powerful your aura is as a projector and the fact that it causes people to be shook. Like I can tell when a projector comments on my stuff because I feel like, oh God. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool, 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 cool. I didn't ask for that. And I know it's a projector because every time it feels like it hits me in my chest, and I'm like, "Excuse me," like even if it's like sometimes even if it's like a compliment or like, I'm just like, and I have to like take a second, and it's because your energy is so powerful. It's a laser beam, like and it you should value that and not just like penetrate just anybody's aura because it's going to get rejected, and that's like all that power, like give it to the people who want it, who are asking for it, because when they get it, it's amazing.
I didn't ask you for this fucking juice. Just kidding. We were just talking about projectors. Projectors trying to give advice when nobody asked for it.
Whoops.
Okay, we still have a million questions, so we're going to try to do. Thank you for the juice, babe. A little bit of a speed round. So I think what this person's asking though, projectors have less energy than like you and I, right?
Yeah. Well, reevaluate what is doing things. What like okay, so I find that with projectors, you have to start to value that you knowing what to do and that your insight carries just as much weight as someone like physically getting things done or being productive, like making content, for instance. As like projectors are here to be the ones who tell us how the energetics of this stuff works, and then we go and we do the stuff down here. We go physically doing all the stuff. And so learning to value the fact that you can give guidance and the fact that you can see the world in the way that you see the world, put more weight on that. Put more weight on your insights and your understanding and your wisdom. And then a half of being a projector is waiting for recognition. You have to create recognition by recognizing yourself and like the things that you do know. When you are wise and when you have those insights, it's a big deal. Like it's like gas yourself up a little bit. The fact that you know these things and that you can see the world this way, because that makes it a lot easier for people to recognize what you have to offer, and then they can ask you for advice, and then they go do the labor stuff because they're designed to go do the labor.
So it's really hard for like projectors to work day jobs, right?
I mean, if their day job is just them telling people stuff, it might not be super hard, or like them delegating tasks and maybe not doing a ton of like work. It could be okay. But the happiest projectors I know, they have open schedules and they do things once a week, and they might do like one of my favorite projectors that I know is Kinsey Madsen. I think you actually had her, but she does like work like once or twice a month, and then the rest of her schedule is open because and so she goes in and her work is teaching people, and she just makes all that stuff in like a couple days, and then she's like, cool, I'm coasting for the rest of the month. And so like letting that be enough, and understanding that, like, because I think we tend to think that like repetitive doing things for 8 hours is what is work, like it's what has to happen to get things done. But a projector telling me, hey, go do this, is infinitely more powerful than me running around doing the wrong thing for 12 hours, you know? So I'd rather have the projector just come in and be like, you're doing that weird, like do that differently. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Because that changes everything.
Sorry, there's all kinds of sounds coming out of me. This juice is really bringing me back from the dead. Also, I just want to say this third baby daddy's the charm. This person has brought me more food in the last week than both ex-husbands did the entire time I was pregnant. Like I've never been taken care of when I'm pregnant. I'm usually like pregnant and also like completely abandoned because I usually fall for people who reject my vulnerability because I rejected my own vulnerability. And now I get to experience like adorable meals and juices and smoothies delivered all day. So very, extremely cute. Yes, very, very good stuff. You know, just wait till you're perimenopausal and you can have great love. Just kidding. You have a good love. See, it's the era. It's love in the era of self-awareness. Okay. There's so much. I might not be able to get to all of it, but Jada says, I have a vague memory of P talking about some crazy fractal video she watched that a friend suggested that induced a psychedelic-ish experience.
Oh,
Oh, I vaguely remember that. God, that was way back.
yeah.
I've been trying to find the episode where she says what it's called. Any recollection by chance? I mean, if
Yes.
I'm recalling correctly, we talked about this in your very first Soberish episode.
Maybe. I don't remember. I know the video. It's called the Mandelbrot set. Just Google that.
Okay. I have seen that. Also, to piggyback off the question above, curious if there's any manifestation advice for those riding waves of a mood disorder.
Sorry, I blanked all the way out when you read that.
To piggyback off the last question above, curious if there's any manifestation advice for those riding the waves of a mood disorder.
Okay, let yourself know that you don't have to feel amazing or even like neutral to manifest because you're always manifesting. So like be aware of any belief that tells you that you have to hold a certain emotional state to be able to create things because I've created things when I manifested my partner when I thought I was dying, so like, you know, so don't make your emotional state a big monster. Everything keeps coming back to that, but find ways to experience and witness your emotional state, and that is going to make you see like what emotions really are a lot clearer as well. Because I really appreciate when I get all like weepy and like scorpionic and existential and on the floor ish. It's just like drama and goth energy, and then I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. But I can still make stuff happen during that time.
I would. I don't have a mood disorder, so I can't say absolutely, but I've got a lot of experience with, other mental health stuff. One thing when I was like really deep in the attachment stuff is my reality would get very distorted when I was in those states. So learning to recognize when I wasn't neutral and not writing movies about my reality when I wasn't neutral. So having a bad, I don't know what you call it, was a mood disorder, but being in a state that isn't neutral or balanced doesn't mean, you're going to uncreate the things you created or whatever. Or you can create in that state. But if you know that you have a tendency to get destructive with your narratives when you're in that state, I learned to go, oh, there's cortisol in my system. Nothing's real right now. And just kind of like disconnect, like, oh, I'm not going to create, I'm not going to write movies. Where what I used to do was I would get into that state, reality would become distorted, and I'd start taking a fucking baseball bat to my relationships and stuff. So I learned to like recognize when I was altered, kind of, and then leave it and don't make any moves. Don't write any narratives. And like when my body feels different, so maybe that might be helpful. Jada also asked, any advice for two reflectors dating? What are the fucking odds of that?
I mean, they're reflectors are reflecting whoever's in their environment. That's what they're doing. So you all are literally probably always reflecting each other. And so like using them as a mirror, like a super mirror is really helpful. Because that's what y'all are doing to each other, is mirroring constantly. Being patient. I don't like the word patient is starting to get on my nerves. It's starting to be very annoying because people give their power away to patience. But like just watching and witnessing the cycles of time during the month and how things shift and how things change, and kind of like just like dancing with time passing, and like, oh, I woke up this morning and I feel really sunny, and like maybe I don't know, the moon was in Leo that day, and so you're feeling extra sunny that day because the moon was in Leo, and because you all are quite sensitive to like astrological transits. But just witnessing and watching, everything's a mirror for you. And move around, like as if you're looking in a mirror all the time?
I don't know shit about reflectors, so I got nothing. I did imagine just like two mirrors, like where it goes mirrors forever. That is like very, the odds of that are extremely slim, right?
Yeah. I'm like, what an interesting life to choose.
All right.
Cool.
We're gonna wrap this up in a minute. I haven't heard this, but this QHHT has been coming up a lot. All right.
Don't pretend to not want it. That's not going to
No, that'll push some shit into your shadow.
Yeah.
And I don't think redirecting either. I would say continuously addressing your attachment. So I can tell when I'm too attached to something because I become afraid of loss. And so that's when I do a little bit of a playing the tape forward. So I haven't like, I would say that twin flame thing was the last time I was like wanting something. So I used to like burn with a burning fucking envious passion. Like when I was a teenager, sorry, I was very poor, and I got married when I was 16, and we were very poor, and I was like cleaning houses, and I would clean these houses in the suburbs. They weren't even like that big of a deal now, but like back then I was just like, we didn't have like good heat when I was a kid. And so I would burn to have a house like that one day or whatever. And now I'm just very, who gives a shit? Some of that's just kind of experience. I would say the majority of that was the belief that happiness was in that house. Happiness exists in this thing that I want. And that a lot of times when I want something very bad, it's because I am projecting that happiness will be there. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so I think it's important. It is usually an indicator, I would say, when you want it really bad. That's a pushing energy. So you do want to balance that somehow. But you can't pretend that you don't want it. I would say rather get into like an observation state of like, why do you have that kind of burning desire? What do you think this is going to provide you?
Yep.
All right, we're going to take a couple more and then go. You guys asked really good questions today. Sorry if I didn't get to all of them. This is extremely common in earth signs when I'm on sessions, I notice. I mean, it's common in a lot of people, but I can almost always, I'm like, are you? You don't have to do anything forever, So I think that that's part of it. And a lot of times people think they have to do this or this, I'll talk to someone, they're like, well, should I move to a farm? This is like literally somebody's recently. Should I move to a farm or be an artist or be, a healer? And for me, as a manifesting generator talking here, yes, all three. If I pick one of those, it's going to die very quick because I kind of need to be doing all of those. So a lot of times these forks in the road aren't even real. But if you're in a position that you like need to get one thing off the ground, pick the easiest, most accessible thing, do that, and then build from there. But like, this is something that came up in the energy update. The world is in a huge flux right now, and we are evolving at a rapid pace. Don't feel like you need to pick one thing for more than a couple months at a time.
Yep. Yeah, I just wouldn't look too far. Don't look too far. What's the next obvious like thing to do? Do that. Mm. Mood board. Collect more of what you want. See more of what you want. Like for me, because I'm moving also. I'm moving in February, and I've been in waiting mode about moving for probably 5 months. I've been like, I'm so excited to move. I'm so excited to move. Sometimes it turns into like, I just can't wait to move. And then when I notice that I'm in like, I need to move, I need to move, two things need to happen for me. One, I need to appreciate where I'm living now and like appreciate like, why did I even choose this apartment in the first place? Like, what do I enjoy about it and kind of bask in that. And then the second thing is like mood board, like click for beautiful images of where I'm trying to go, what I want to move towards, what kind of couch do I want? Just kind of playing and pretending and like, just having fun with like what's about to unfold. Those are the two things that I'm doing with my waiting process, with my move.
Not for me, 2019. For me, it's 2020. But there does seem to be there is also an echo of 2012 rather. So I do think time is a flat circle, and that you can probably retrace a lot of our spirals to previous years. All right. Sorry for your loss. I think, unfortunately, this is likely going to be, I could be wrong, but because I thought this in 2019. I guess it did happen in 2020, but oh, wow. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think we have to redefine death as our own death is optional and fine. We just immediately go into something else and kind of it's whatever. The death of other people sucks because you're going to miss them, but that's about the extent of it. But we have all these things about tragedy and unfair and too soon and all these judgments that are really based in a fear of death. I mean, they really truly come from a fear of death. It's odd that it's the one thing that will definitely happen to everyone. And we are so recoiling from it. The veil is also non-existent, and most of us are evolved to the point where you can still have regular contact with people that aren't in their old physical avatar anymore. I think there's also, I don't know what's happening with the reincarnation right now, but I know someone whose child died and it reincarnated into her next child. Like that kid goes, "That's me." Pictures of her child that passed away. I mean, it's wild. Shit's wild. But it's sad. It's sad to lose somebody because you don't get to play the game with them anymore. I haven't been afraid of my own death anymore. Every time I have like a kid or something, I get reattached and have to like go back to accepting, because it's like, oh, I don't want to leave these kids without, whatever. But the reality is, if they came here and lost a parent young, it's because they wanted to have the experience of, like that's my belief system. So, but I think that there's going to be a collective reconciling with this. And it's either going to be because our consciousness reaches the place that we're like, hey, isn't it weird that we don't have like a healthy relationship with death? Or it's going to be because there's going to be a lot of death and you're going to have no choice but to get together with it. I have to pee so bad, it's making me nauseous. So people were very excited about the world Mandelbrot. Yep, I'm done. All right. I love you guys very much. Thank you. I'm probably going to relax for the rest of the day. Miguel and I are going to record tomorrow. Tomorrow's my last day of postponed readings, sessions, whatever. So episodes out this week. I'll try to get them all finished this week. And maybe I can get Miguel to come do the other live stream next week. Thank you so much, P. Always very much fun. And remember, stop judging yourself. That's really it. Like would you say that's our
Yeah.
collective catchphrase?
Stop judging yourself and judging your life for a second, and then rejudge it as something super cool. And then life's like, oh, it's super cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, all right. We're doing that then. Yeah. You're the boss. You're the boss. All right. Love you. Bye.